Sometimes here on CMA, we give you all the details, the latest, the greatest, the newest technologies. But sometimes there's a value in bringing it back to basics. We've got so many listeners across the mobile electronics community. We want to make sure that here on CMA Networks, we've got the right info for you. Starting with today's episode, where we're featuring Stinger Solutions, a manufacturer of multiple solutions, especially when it comes to OEM integration. Today, we've got their trainer, Matthew Palumbo, in the house, and I'm going to ask him the questions that you and every shop out there should already know about. This is CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM, all about Stinger and OEM integration. And it starts now. What's going on, guys, and welcome to another CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu, and you are tuned into CMA Networks, where we talk mobile electronics day in and day out. The topic of the day is OEM integration, and we're going to have this conversation with one of the biggest brands in this category, and that is, of course, Stinger. I'd like to welcome my guest today, Matthew Palumbo. Now, Matt, you've been on multiple Connecteds, but today we're going to bring it back down to basics with those key items that everybody should know about. What do you have lined up for us for today's chat?
Hey, Ben. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And you're absolutely right. We have talked a ton about all the coolest and latest. But as far as OEM integration and what we have in store for today, let's talk about the Epicenter Micro Pro, a new release from Audio Control, as well as some products from PAC that maybe not everybody is aware of, but they should be, which is the LPH and APH harnesses. They're T harnesses that make OEM integration a snap, as well as something that's been around for a little while, but there's still a lot of guys out there not using them that should be, and that is the LGDs from Audio Control, the load generating devices.
Matt, I love that we're bringing this back to basics because OEM integration is absolutely at the core of all business right now when we're talking about upgrading sound systems in some of today's modern vehicles. But first, we're going to have an opportunity here for our partner SiriusXM to remind you why it's always great to have an attachment sale. And when we come back, let's get into 101 OEM integration. I'll see you after the break.
Hey, Paul here with SiriusXM, and I'd like to talk to you about attachment selling and why the SiriusXM product is one of the best things to add, especially since we don't trade dollars with any other category. I could go through all of this, but let's hear what some of our dealers have to say.
It's an easy add-on that takes, 10, 15 minutes if we're running an antenna, 1 minute if we've got an adapter to plug it into the factory SiriusXM antenna, and it's extra money, so no brainer.
I present it to every customer because a lot of customers don't know what all they can do with Sirius. They don't know what all content they could have. It just makes too much sense not to sell it.
It creates a different customer loyalty and customer security when you explain to them why it's a better experience. Just gets them back in the door. And then the next car, they're already asking for it again. So it just keeps selling itself. It makes more sense.
Well, there you have it. You heard from our dealers. Just remember some of the best practices. Make sure you have one on display so you can demo it. Make sure you're taking advantage of our rewards program, because if you're not taking advantage of that, you're leaving even more money on the table. Make sure you got our POP up on display. And other than that, just make sure you're recommending it.
Matt, always a pleasure to have you on the show. And I'm so happy you agreed to do this because when we're kind of preparing for the show, we're like, Matt, we're always talking about the latest and greatest. But yet, if we look in our comments section of our videos, there's always people asking some pretty fundamental questions. So I said, hey, why don't we dig into it and talk about some of the things that people really do need to know if they want to succeed in installing and, putting in great sound into customers' vehicles. What do you have to say about this? And am I out to left field here, or that's just my perception?
No, I think I think you really hit it on the head, Ben. I mean, we've got so many shops out there that are having to deal with this on a daily basis. Like every day cars are coming in that they don't want to change the factory radio. And let's be honest, a lot of times they don't need to. They have all the features they want. The biggest problem in a modern vehicle is sound, right? Not enough bass, not enough volume, too much distortion. Those are the biggest things that come up. And I always ask, when I was in retail, customers would come in and say, I want my car to sound better. Well, what does sound better mean to you? And what I found is that sound better generally means those three things. They want more bass, more volume, less distortion. And you can accomplish that keeping the factory radio. You don't have to replace that.
100%. And to your point, Matt, so many of these new vehicles, honestly, I don't know if there is an aftermarket solution that is better from an aesthetic point of view, from a functionality point of view. I mean, it's already set up. All they want is better sound. But here's the problem. It's not as simple as just plugging in, an amplifier. In a lot of different cases, things get complicated. Now, here's what I've noticed in talking with installers and shops from all over North America and the world, in that matter. Sometimes, if they don't understand the problem, they either avoid it. That's option A, as in don't do it. Sorry, we can't help you, mister. Or they do it wrong. And there's no need for that, not with the technology and the tools that are available. And that's why this show, if you're wondering, the easy 4 things you need to know about to make sure you succeed in OEM integration, pay attention for the next 10 minutes. We're going to break it all down, starting with a magic little box that we all know and love called the Epicenter. Now, the Epicenter, you guys should already know what this is. But if you don't know, this is a magic box that gives you bass. And it's even more relevant today than when it was invented, I don't know how many years ago. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the latest rendition called the Epicenter Micro Pro.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ben. Everybody's probably familiar with the Epicenter in one of its incarnations. But what a lot of guys don't realize is how important it is to OEM integration. And I know there's a lot of you out there right now that are scratching your heads a little bit going, wait, OEM integration and Epicenter, what is the correlation there? Well, this is why we've been improving the Epicenter over the past few years. Yes, we still make a traditional Epicenter, but we have come out with products like the new Epicenter Micro Pro that are specifically aimed towards the OEM integration market. And what makes this thing special, what makes it all about OEM integration is not just that it has high-level inputs and some great OEM integration features, but it's how many vehicles out there don't have bass in them. And again, some of you are going, what is he talking about? Every car has some sort of bass. Not true. There are a lot of vehicles out there today that have no bass in their signal path whatsoever. And I mean no bass. We call them permanently high-passed vehicles. And that's basically what they are, is the OEM manufacturer has just decided that, hey, this car is never really going to reproduce this low-frequency information well anyhow. So let's just cut it out. Let's just cross it over and make it not do it at all. And that's where something like the Epicenter Micro Pro comes into play.
All right, I'm going to stop you right there because I want to address our audience here. No, what Matt's talking about is not fiction. This is actually real. And I remember, Matt, the first time you came on CMA and talked about this, I said, what are you talking about, Willis? But yes, there are actually vehicles. I can think of one, and there's probably more, but I believe you referenced a Honda vehicle. I think it was an Accord, whereby if you simply put an RTA on the factory signal, there is simply no bass. Not that it's missing it, not that it's sloping when you're turning up the volume. It simply is not there. So here you are, poor Mr. Installer, trying to get a full signal out of an Accord, and you just can't get the bass. Well, guess what? It's not your fault. The reason is there actually is no bass. And the Epicenter, because of its algorithm, and maybe you want to talk about that real quick, how do you magically make bass appear?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Epicenter Micro Pro has the same Epicenter effect that we've had in our Epicenter line for years. So rest assured, the Epicenter effect that you all know and love is still there. It's just that sometimes now we're using it a little bit differently. Where it used to just be, hey, I'm going to, add some bass to a song that was recorded poorly or a genre of music that doesn't have a lot of bass to begin with. Now we're using it to add bass to vehicles that just don't have a lot. And the way that it works is it actually analyzes the signal coming in and it recreates or injects bass that was never there. And how it does that is it actually looks at the harmonics. It looks at what is the lowest bass that's currently in the signal, and then it magically puts bass in one octave below and an octave below that and an octave below that. So it's constantly analyzing and doing this as you're listening. So regardless of what you're listening to, and regardless of whether the vehicle is high passing at 70 hertz or so, like that Honda that we were talking about, now that Honda that didn't have any bass below about 70 hertz now has bass at 35 and 17 and a half and so on and so forth. And now it sounds normal. That Honda in particular was actually a rep of ours car years and years ago when I first heard of this problem. And just, quick aside, he had put in a couple of high-end woofers. I mean, $1,000 a piece subwoofers, custom enclosure, one big mono amp per woofer. And it literally sounded like he had a factory 6-inch sub. Like that was the end result. And then he busted out his DMRTA, analyzed the signal, and he sends me a screenshot immediately. And he's like, Matt, what is going on in this car? And keep in mind, too, could you solve this by putting in an aftermarket radio? Absolutely, you could. Sure. But in that Accord, as an example, like that car had a big touch screen. It had CarPlay and Android Auto and a backup camera and satellite radio and USB and Bluetooth and aux and steering wheel control. You would have spent a couple $1,000s to put a system in there that does exactly what the car already does, but just has clean RCA outputs. Or you could spend a couple $100 and just drop in a really good product that takes care of the issue.
There you go. Magic box, guys. Like I said, make space out of nothing at all. All right. That was one. We got three more really important ones. Now, this one you're going to have to bear with us, guys, because this is going to be a lot of acronyms. But that's okay. We're going to talk about what these acronyms are. The first acronym, we're going to be talking about two different types of harnesses that every shop should have in stock, ready to go, because you never know what's coming into your bay. The first acronym is LPH Harnesses. This is from PAC. I'm going to let you take it away, Matt.
Yeah, Ben. So these harnesses are really an installer's best friend. Like you mentioned, LPH, here's how I remember it. Think of LPH as low power harness. So deck power, non-amplified, basic sound, whatever you want to call it. Of course, there's no such thing as non-amplified, right? They all have some sort of an amplifier. It's just probably built into the radio. But in this case, let's call it low power. So a low power harness. What is this for? This T harnesses in behind the factory radio, and what it does is gives you all the wires you need to do the job. And by do the job, I mean add a bass package, add a multi-channel amplifier, whatever it is that you're doing. We've got a T harness that's going to plug in, have all the factory connectors on it, and make it so that you don't have to cut anything. If I would have had these years ago, I would have saved so much time and energy. I can't tell you how many times we had to cut the harness behind a radio, run 2 runs of 9-wire, and sit there and identify every lead. Now, you could still do it that way. Yeah, it'll work. It's going to take you a whole lot of time. You have to sit there and identify every single wire and make sure you get your polarity correct and so on and so forth. Or you could just drop in an LPH harness and away you go. Now, the cool thing about these harnesses is they've been updated over time. So if you took a look at these years ago, they are different now. They now have a cool little disconnect on them. And what this allows you to do is kind of adapt these harnesses for whatever your situation is. So for example, if you're just adding a bass package, well, we don't want to interrupt the signal to the front speakers. We just probably want to grab signal from them. We want a T in, not Y in, if you catch my drift. Now, in that case, it comes with little disconnects so that you can plug in a harness that will grab signal from those front speakers, but still allow the signal to pass through and go out to the speakers themselves. And now you've got signal to go into your LOC. Now, all of these LPH harnesses are designed for a behind-the-dash installation, meaning they're not very long. So if you're going to drop in a LC2i Pro, a Epicenter Micro Pro, something like that, and put it in the dash, you're good to go. These LPH harnesses even break out power, ground, and turn on for you whenever possible. So if you're doing an install like that, you're set. But what if you're doing a multi-channel install? What if you're gonna have to put a LC7i Pro or a DSP under a seat? Well, we've got you covered there too, because we have an accessory called the LPH EXT17. This is essentially, think of it like 2 runs of 9-wire. One for your signal in, one for your amplifier channels out, back out to the speakers. And we've got them all broken out for you with slick little connectors so you cannot get it wrong or get it backwards, okay? It's beautiful. Now, this begs the question, what about an amplified vehicle? This is great for cars that are basic, Matt, but what about all the premium sound cars? This is where the APH harnesses come in. So with an APH harness, APH harnesses stand for amplified, okay? That's how I remember it. LP, low power, AP, amplified, okay? So APH harnesses are going to connect at the factory amplifier, but they're essentially the same idea. The same rules apply. It's all plug and play. It's all the factory mating connectors. So you're just going to unplug the output of the amplifier, the factory amp. You're going to plug in a T harness that plugs back into the factory amplifier. And now what it does is it breaks out all of that wiring for you. So now you have the signal out from the factory amplifier, or maybe you just need the harnesses that go out to the speakers. Those are included in an APH harness as well. So if you're dealing with an amplified vehicle, check to see if we have an APH harness for it. It's going to save you so much time and headache, because even if it's a vehicle that doesn't follow standards, right? It's not just front left, front right, rear left, rear right. Maybe it's got center and sub and D pillar speakers and all those things. Not only do we have them all broken out for you, they're all labeled. Everything is labeled for you. So it's totally no guesswork as to what goes to which channel and so on and so forth. We've got them all broken out, labeled, ready to go. Makes life so much easier for both LPH and APH harnesses on those vehicles.
All right, so we talked about both LPH, low power, and APH, amplified harnesses. I love the little tip there. That helps a lot. How many different type of harnesses are we talking about? Are these like all application specific? Like what is give me an idea of the type of inventory a shop should have.
Sure. So for covering like the majority of your late model vehicles, you're probably going to have maybe 15 different SKUs tops, I would say. Now we make more than that, but to cover your everyday stuff, I'd say if you stocked maybe 10 to 15 harnesses, you could cover the majority of what comes into your bay. And of course, you're going to want to custom tailor that to what you're seeing in your area. Maybe some of the more outlier vehicles, you may want to just keep as special order, but we have these harnesses for the majority of late model vehicles.
I love it. Super clean. You know what I mean? Especially when you're some of these tight spaces you got to dig into to get access to certain wires. I mean, it's brilliant. Absolutely. I think the key, though, Matt, really, with any of the items that we're going to be talking about today, is awareness. Not only awareness for the installer to know that these tools and resources are available to them, but the salespeople also need to know about these things because they need to include the cost of these items in the quote that they make. You know, you can't just do the big hardware, as in the components, the amps, and that type of stuff. These things cost money, but they're absolutely imperative to the success of the final result. So, having said this last one totally falls into the same category. Yes, another acronym. They're called LGDs. This time we're talking about load generating devices. And if you don't know what that is, well, I got the best guy in the world to explain it to you.
Yeah, for sure, Ben. I mean, the LGDs are absolutely essential to late model vehicle OEM integration. And to just wrap up the APH, LPH conversation a little bit too, you mentioned how much of a time saver these are. Don't forget, if you're doing leased vehicles or anything where a customer may have to return the car to stock, like they're perfect for that because you're not cutting anything. And on the salesman side of things, absolutely. I mean, yes, they have to keep the cost of these in mind when writing up the estimate, but if you just simply ask the customer, hey, do you want all your wires in your car cut up, or do you want to include this part so that we don't modify anything? 9 times out of 10, they're going to choose to include that harness and not chop up their vehicle. Now, when it comes to OEM integration and late model vehicles, Ben alluded a little bit to, the LGDs and load generating and how this all works. Well, you're absolutely right, Ben. I mean, they are essential. And if you are an installer or a dealer out there and you haven't heard of these, I don't know how you're getting the job done because late model vehicles practically require them. Here's the problem. So many cars today use a circuit style in their factory amplifier chipset that is programmed to actually check for impedance. So what they're doing and how this all kind of started is it became really popular with the Chrysler vehicles of the day. When Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram first started implementing this, it literally, set the industry abuzz about, hey, what is going on here? And what people were realizing is, hey, I took the signal that used to go to the factory subwoofer and I unplugged the subwoofer and I fed it into my line output converter because I'm just adding an amp and sub. Hey, everything should be fine, right? And then what they'd notice is maybe they finish the job, everything sounds pretty good, they park the vehicle, they come back to the vehicle a while later and start it up, and next thing you know, there's no sound. Why? Because that factory amplifier, after the BCM shut down and the car went to sleep, the next time the car was started up, it checked. When you started up that car, when you started up that Dodge Charger, Challenger, whatever, it went check, 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 and it looked for all the speakers. And when it saw that there was no subwoofer on the subwoofer output of the amplifier, it says, okay, no subwoofer present, no signal. Well, guess what? Your basic LOC does not present a load to that factory amplifier. So it thinks nothing is there, therefore you get no signal. Now, this isn't a problem if you're keeping the factory speaker involved, right? If it's still connected and you're just tapping onto that signal for sound to go into your product, you're okay. It's when you're removing something, or let's say you're Y-ing in instead of T-ing in, right? Same thing if you're doing a multi-channel amplifier. We're taking the signal that used to go to the 4 speakers, now we're feeding it into a line output converter or a DSP before it goes to our amplifier. That's a problem, because again, that factory amp or factory radio does not see those speakers anymore. It doesn't see the impedance load. That's a problem. So what did we do to come up with this and fix this issue is LGDs. The LGDs from Audio Control come in a pair. They're inexpensive and they solve problems. I know they're not the sexiest product in the world to talk about, but when they fix a problem and they save you from tearing your hair out with frustration, they're super sexy at that point. Now, we have multiple models of these for different applications and different year ranges, but what you need to know is they are a lifesaver because they are basically tricking the factory radio into thinking that there's still a load present. Now, I'm going to kind of focus on the green LGD, the LGD 20, because this is one of the most popular models. This thing covers more vehicles and applications than just about any other unit. Some things to know: they are universal. They can be used with, of course, Audio Control product. They even have the nice little Phoenix connectors on them that plug in easily to most of our products, should you need them, or you can simply cut the wires in the middle and feed it into any product in the aftermarket. They're also non-directional, so there is no input and output. It makes no difference which side goes to the car and which side goes to the product. Now, keep in mind a couple of things with LGDs, and then I'll wrap this up, and that is just because you can get away with not putting them in doesn't mean you didn't need them. I hear from installers all the time that say, "Hey, Matt, I did a vehicle last week and I didn't use LGDs and the car was fine. It didn't come back. The guy was happy. It sounded good. What's the problem?" Keep in mind that just because you didn't put them in and you got away with it doesn't mean that it couldn't have been better. There are sometimes audible differences when you put in an LGD. Sometimes with an LGD in place, you'll get better high frequency response. The sparkle kind of comes back to the system. Sometimes they'll eliminate noise, hiss, pops, turn on clicks, etc. I've seen that in some Harleys. In some vehicles, I'll take, for example, a Subaru with the Starlink system, I believe it is. Those systems will actually email the customer if it thinks there's a problem with Starlink. And what it'll do is it will actually tell them there's a problem with the car, tell them to go to the dealership, and guess what's going to happen? They're going to go to the dealership. Dealership's going to check out the car. They're going to see some aftermarket gear installed, and we all know who they're going to blame, right? Now, what could have been done is some LGDs were installed in that Subaru, trick that little module into thinking it's still connected to the speakers, and all would be well with the world. So as you can see, LGDs really are a lifesaver. And just so that you know, they're built in to pretty much all of the late model Audio Control products. Things like the Epicenter Micro Pro, for example, they have this great little switch here that says load select. That's what this is. This is basically all 3 models of LGD built right in. And we have this on the LC1i, 2i Pro, 5i Pro, 7i Pro, Epicenter Micro, and the Epicenter Micro Pro. So there are a ton of our products that now have this feature built right in.
Hey, you know, Matt, I got to thank you for coming in. And I know the intention is always to talk about the latest and the greatest, but man, there is value in what we talked about today. Some key critical components and resources and tools that really will help shops succeed. And that's what we really want. So thank you for that. Any last message that you have for anybody tuning into this episode?
No, I think, we really covered a lot today. And like you said, I think getting back to basics is important. I mean, we see some of the comments out there. I know the questions that come into my inbox sometimes. And it's important for us to remember that, although there are some guys out there that knew about everything we talked about today, there are lots more out there who don't know about most of it, right? And it's important for everybody to understand these products and see how it could help them with OEM integration, turn out better jobs, turn out cleaner installs and happier customers. And really, I think that's what we all want. So thank you so much for having me on the show today, Ben. It was fun, like it always is. I appreciate it. And for more information on any of the products we talked about today, be sure to check out stingersolutions.com or pack-audio.com, audiocontrol.com as well. Thanks so much, Ben.
And that was Stinger Solutions' Matthew Palumbo joining us for this real back to basic kind of rudimentary type of informative session, and I do appreciate it. Hopefully you guys appreciate it as well. Of course, Matt, told you all the different websites to go to, and really the resources are out there, guys. If there's anything to take away from this, is here at CMA Networks, we want to make sure that we're always putting out the latest and greatest information of what's going on in the mobile electronics world. But we also want to be aware that there's always newcomers, there's always people that didn't see a video. So once in a while, we're going to circle back to important items like the ones covered today, whether it's what an epicenter does, or the importance of LPH and APH harnesses, and of course, load generating devices like we just talked about. These are all, maybe not the sexiest, but I'll tell you what's sexy is when the customer is happy and you're making that sale and everything is awesome. That's it for this CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.